So that was kind of the first realization that I left that night, a little frustrated that I'm going to try and show the work before it's done. And it's this impromptu visit. But part of me was like, God, I'm really glad that this gallery's coming because look what I did. I'm back in it. I have all these ideas. Some of these are more done than I thought. Things are better than I thought. So I just got back from traveling in France, doing this big hike around Mont Blanc. And before I left, I was really busy with all kinds of preparations for our Spark program. And I had some time to paint, luckily, but it wasn't a lot. And I got things going pretty good. And then I went and I left and I was gone for a few weeks. And then when I got back, there was all kinds of deadlines and things that I had to attend to because I've been gone so long. And well, you know the story. The art sometimes can go unattended. And I've just noticed every time this thing that happens around my art, that the more I do it, the easier it is to stay in it. And then the less I do, the less I tend to do. It becomes harder. You'd think it would just be, your thought you'd be so excited to come back to it if you've had a big break, which is true, but there's a resistance there. And I think the resistance, at least for me, comes from wondering, really questioning whether it's that good. Welcome to Art2Life, a podcast for the creatively curious. My name is Nicholas Wilton, and each week I'll help you rediscover not just the art of your life, but the art in your life. Join me as we explore that perfect blue at twilight, the wild frontiers of art making, and the extraordinary joy of finding your way as you go. Probably under the surface of everything, there's like our thoughts of what it was like in our memory, because we haven't been involved in it, is probably diminishes actually what it is. It distorts it. If you relate to this, it just tends to kind of diminish the longer you don't work. And for me, it gets to a certain point where I go crazy and I just have to get into the studio and everything's fine. But this happened to me recently, and I realized I've been seeing this happening my whole life. What happened this time was right smack dab in the middle of the busyness with getting all the things done and fixing the car and getting a haircut and all the things. I get a call from my gallery, one of my galleries, and it turns out they're in town tomorrow. And they want to come by the gallery. I mean, the timing's fine, probably, but I don't feel like I can show this work. I'm still dealing with trying to get into the studio to see if it's even worthy of anything. And now here comes somebody who's, it's really important to me that I show them things that I'm really excited about. And this is usually something I can do. If I have a show, I have all this time and I prepare and the paintings show up and, I put a lot of intention into it and I'm pretty confident. I've worked hard at it and it's a win, and these paintings can sell, and that's my end of the deal. And this is so important, this relationship. But now not if I hadn't really been in the studio in a few weeks, and I'm kind of wondering if my work's even halfway decent. And it's all unfinished. I can't even remember what I did 4 weeks ago. I've been in so many different places, and I mean, everything's great. It just, on the work front, the art front, I'm feeling like I got to get in there right away and check things, because here comes this gallery and I want it to, look good. And it's like the worst timing. If I had 2 weeks for this, I would feel a little better, because then I could make some things, I could finish some things. But just stopping by, she might just come by and say, well, listen, I think this is, that's the fear, that the insecurity that this work's is not really ready. It's not ready for prime time. I just haven't been in there. So that's the first problem. And I'm just highlighting this because this happens to me all the time. And then what continues to happen once I go. So the end of this story is what happens is I rush into the studio fearing the worst. I open the doors and kind of run in and look around, and it's a total mess. So I got to clean this up. There's some paintings I've started that really, I don't know what I was thinking. I don't want her to see these. These are like a completely different direction. This is all in my head, by the way. This isn't reality. This isn't at all what she's like or thinks. She probably, who knows, but this is all in me. And I'm talking about it because it's really unnecessary. And I learn this every time, but I start cleaning up the studio. I'm getting it organized, and I take some of the paintings, the way they're on the wall, some look really redundant. So I almost hang it like a show, give equal space and move some of the clutter away. And I mean, the studio's covered in paint, and it's, I'm not going to be able to repaint it or anything, but that's okay. I just want the work to look good. So I take the paintings down, I rearrange them, move them around, and that looks a little better, and I'm cleaning the studio and putting things away and putting caps back on oil paint tubes and cleaning those brushes that I left out and moving cardboard boxes. And it actually kind of starts looking a little better. And they're not done, but there's something here, it's kind of impressive, like a big room full of all your work, So as I'm in there, just messing around for an hour or two, getting it ready, which I would never show these paintings to her. I wouldn't photograph them and send them to her because they're not done. There's something happening in them, and I don't like them totally. They're not done, but it is interesting, and so I'm starting to feel a little better about them. And this is what always happens, that it doesn't really matter I'm not even making art. I'm just involving myself with this work. I'm just kind of occupying the space with it. I'm moving the paintings around. I'm changing the studio, and that always helps, changing the order of how they're on the wall and giving them equal space, pretending almost like they're done. And it improves the work. It's like a reframe for yourself. And then I'm starting to feel better, like, God, I'm sort of glad she's coming because it really got me scared and got me back in here. And it turns out things aren't so bad after all, which they never are. What was bad was my avoidance of it. And as I kept avoiding it and not going in, it kind of grew, like the problem gets bigger. And this is just not necessary, but I do it every time. So I'm grabbing these paintings and I'm moving around, and I'm thinking, I have these small 12 by 12s. Many folks have come to workshops, and I teach a lot of folks in our programs at Art2Life and the Creative Visionary program and in destination workshops. And we use these 12 by 12 panels to do it. And I love doing small paintings. I love experimenting. I love mixing paint on them and just trying different things. It's not such a commitment, right? As a large painting, most of my paintings are really large, and most of them are oil on canvas, and they're big, 5 foot, 6 foot, 7 foot. I even have an 8-foot one in the studio right now. But then I have these 12-inch paintings, and they're all over the place. We have a downstairs studio in the building where Art2Life is, where I do a lot of video filming and writing, and I record podcasts down there. And then my painting studio is where I just paint. But these 12 by 12s tend to get kind of lost in the shuffle. I'll come back from a workshop and I'll have 10 that I've made, and 6 are good and 3 are halfway done. And so I'm realizing, well, I should show her some of these 12 by 12s because I do sell them, and we have these really beautiful frames. And so I'm running around the building looking for these 12 by 12s, and there's a lot. Like I'm like, I can't believe it. Oh, here's 4 more, and here's 3 more. And so I gather them up, and I've got this 4 foot by 8 foot table, and I put white paper on it, and I lay these paintings out, and I'm just going to show a couple. And then I'm like, well, I got 30 or 40 here. I'll put 8 there. Well, if 8 are good, 16 is better. And like, I'm just adding, I'm showing more stuff, mostly because I want her to, I hope it's successful. I mean, success for me would be that she leaves and wants some things. And that's success for me too. So I'm just putting a whole bunch of these little paintings on the table that I think are the best ones that I kind of like. Too many for sure. And what's so interesting is I would never coach any artist to do this. You want to really choose just what you think are the best. So don't listen to me here. I'm just insecure and trying to make this a happy ending, But so I put too many out, and it looks a little like a garage sale, a rummage sale of paintings, but I try to make the spacing equal, and some of them are good. And who knows, and does it really matter? She's just coming by. I didn't even have any warning, So I have all these pictures on this little table. And so that's kind of like, well, at least she can take some of these small ones maybe. And then we got the big ones, which they're close to finish, some. And I'm walking around the room looking at the paintings. And this is what also happens is I'm standing there, and this might happen to you too. Is it done? I mean, it actually, in its incompleteness, there's a kind of completeness about it. There's something wonderful about leaving something kind of freshly not done. Like that can be part of the work. And if it is part of the work, it's done. So I'm scratching my head looking at a couple of these that, one is certainly done. I know that. But the other 4 or 5, there's probably 7 in there. I'm not sure. 2 of them look like they could be done, but they're a little different. And one's totally different, like something I've never done. That's not done. I'm not even sure about this. A total outlier. And then I've got this 8-foot painting that I've been staring at forever, but it's been behind this couch, and the couch has covered it up, and the painting's so big and it's so heavy, I'm always too lazy to pull it out and work on it. And I never can remember what's on the bottom of the painting, so I have to see it. So I move the couch, and this is part of like I'm rearranging the furniture now in the studio, but I want to see this 8-foot painting. And when I pull the couch away, it actually looks pretty good because I hadn't seen the bottom of it, and the bottom of it's interesting and it works with the top. And so that's kind of encouraging, and it's big. So I have this kind of wonderful, like I'm all excited about these paintings now and really fired up about it. And I didn't work on them, and nothing really changed. What changed though was me in coming in and interacting. So I guess the idea here is if you don't feel like making your art, like go in there, visit, go in. You don't need to have an appointment to make sure, to force yourself, like what happened to me. But it was just this thing, like, why was there so much resistance? Like this is such a cool thing. No wonder the gallery's coming. I mean, this is kind of wild what I'm doing here, like it's certainly interesting. So that was kind of the first realization that I left that night, a little frustrated that I'm going to try and show the work before it's done. And it's this impromptu visit. But part of me was like, God, I'm really glad that this gallery's coming because look what I did. I'm back in it. I have all these ideas. Some of these are more done than I thought. Things are better than I thought. And this is the idea. Things are usually better than you imagine. I don't know why, at least with art making, why when we remember, especially if some time's gone by, that you think the works, you worry that it's not up to par. At least I do. And I've heard from other people that this happens to them too. And it's actually behind when this problem of you don't go in for a few weeks, and that turns to months, and that turns to years, and then you're so bummed that you just dropped the ball that you just avoid it altogether, and suddenly your art stops. So the moral of the story, or the part of this story, is that you just want to kind of stay in it a little bit. I try to connect things, my life, what I'm also doing So it connects to my art. So everything is kind of feeding into everything else. But this was a real eye-opener, this surprise gallery visit. And then the visit came, and it was actually kind of interesting because I learned some things here as well. I come in the morning and I get everything, check and get it all cleaned up. I sweep the floor and, do what I can. And literally, the gallery's just coming. It's so totally casual. We have a great relationship. It's just like a friend coming by. She has no idea that I'm even concerned. It's like, yeah, come by. It's messy, whatever, But I go in the morning and I check and make sure and move a painting or two, And anyway, she comes in and interestingly enough, she's with her daughter, her young daughter, out of college, kind of who's working now. And I think she's starting to go work in the gallery as well. So that's interesting. And I'm so concerned she's going to walk in and look at the walls and just say, listen, I've got to leave. This is horrendous, but it's not at all. She's brought her daughter. And so that becomes the interesting thing. I've never met her. And she's asking her daughter like, well, wow, look at all this. And she says to me, Nick, would you explain to her like what you're doing, what this work is about, which was completely out of left field. Like, okay, sure. You're like, well, here, come over here. So that was kind of not what I was expecting. She wants her daughter to hear about why I'm doing this and what this work is about. And, and it's always hard to try to explain your work, especially without thinking about it. I just make it, and I definitely have words to articulate it. So I set about this, and I'm trying to make it relatable. I have a daughter, her daughter's age, and maybe she wants to go into this as a career. So I'm trying to explain like how a person gets involved in this and how my paintings, they're these kind of poems that I make and that even though this work is abstract, it's also very realistic to me. And I know it's abstract to most people, but to me, it feels real. It feels like life. And there's various reasons why. A lot of the colors I use represent things from my life. A lot of the shapes and forms are derived from things in nature that I used to paint realistically. Most people looking at my work wouldn't notice that. They just say, oh, this is an abstract painting and move on. But to me, it's a whole language. And a poem is a good way to describe it because a poem, not all the words are filled in. It's not a book. It's a poem. It's a few words that get a lot of meaning and there's a lot of metaphor in this work. And, she seems really interested, and I'm going on and on. I'm walking around sharing what I'm doing. And, it is a thing, when you really start talking about what you're making to somebody, there's a lot of thought in it. There's a lot that's happened in my life that have made these paintings what they are. And here we are, and here they are. And this is why this work is this way. And this is what matters to me. And I'm explaining all this. And I kind of get to this certain point, and I want it to sound like, hey, you could choose a career in law, or you could become a doctor, or you could become an artist like me. And this is kind of how you do it, but it is so out there. It really is. And it's totally different for everyone why they do this. I mean, it's the category of life that doesn't fit in any kind of category. I've described it as like the odds and ends of life that you just put in a cardboard box and you put it behind the couch. I love that there isn't anything particularly prescriptive or linear about art making. I love that. And I'm trying hard to make it like consumable for her, because maybe she wants to do this art thing. But at a certain point, I'm telling her, and I come in here and And I don't know actually what I'm going to do. I don't know where I'm going entirely. And I don't know how these paintings are going to turn out. And I often feel completely lost. I got to level with her. I mean, it's really true. I don't know. Sometimes it makes sense and other times it doesn't. Sometimes I have to change things. But when I look back at it all, here we are, and look at this room, and all this stuff's here, and your mom seems to be interested in it and clearly does this dance with a lot of people. And this is how she's created her life, and she sells to all these people in the world that love what we're doing. There's all these cheerleaders, collectors and people that take this and frame it and install it in these expensive homes, or there's these people that relate to it, and I sort of give in to this thing where I don't know so much, and it's kind of not like a lot of other things in life, So I kind of finished this 10 or 15 minute conversation, and her daughter's really into it. You could tell, when someone's listening to you and they're super smart. They're just inputting it, and she just is on the page, and her mom's like, great. I really needed her to hear this. And I was thinking, wow, that's so cool. She's here to give her daughter this kind of information in addition to all that other stuff that young folks learn about careers and, I don't know why, but that was the feeling. Her mom was like, yeah, this is good for her to hear. This is so solid. As the parent, you want your kids to be exposed to all the things. And then that sort of segued into kind of looking at the work, which after I talked about it all, I left that conversation and sort of looking up at it all well, this just makes perfect sense then, doesn't it? Well, look what's come out of this inquiry. Look, it was sort of I felt so confident after thinking about it and talking about it and really thinking about what I was doing and how long I've been doing it and the journey of it. These pictures are part of a bigger sequence. And it's a hell of a momentum. This isn't stopping anytime soon. I'll be doing this right to the end, and it's just going to get better. And, I felt pretty confident just looking up at the work, and then we stood back and in context with what I was talking about. And her mom was asking her daughter, which ones do you love? And her daughter was saying this one or that one. And, that's always a good sign when you have a group of things and somebody, who wants to buy one, that's why you show 10 paintings to someone who's considering art, because if you show them one, it's a yes or a no. But if you show them 10, the question shifts. It's a little bit of a marketing strategy. It doesn't become, shall I buy it? It's more the question, the pressing question becomes, which one? Well, which one do you like? And there's a bit of a process there of figuring that out and talking about how you like this, but this one's got that, but this doesn't have here. And so she's looking at all these and she's asking, which one's finished. And I'm sort of said that these three are, but these are going to stay like this, but there's just a little bit more to do, And we have this long conversation and she looks at those 12 by 12s and she's not overwhelmed with all of them. And she starts choosing. She starts getting this one over there and she puts this one with that one. And she's creating her own little collection, that was good. I'm like, God, I'm glad I put out 30 boards here, because she's choosing. And it's interesting. Never the boards necessarily. She's definitely chosen some of the ones I love, but certainly others that I did, it's definitely no, it's not, which is also a kind of a reminder. You don't even know. It doesn't even matter what you like or don't. If whoever is looking at these things is going to make up their own mind. So that was another thing that was like, oh, good. I'm glad I showed a whole bunch of things, even some of the ones that I didn't love so much, because there's 3 of the ones I didn't love so much, and she chose them. So she chooses about 10 of these, and I still need to get them framed and finish them. So that was really great. And then she looks in the room and she goes, well, I think I want all 5 of those, the 8-foot one and these other ones. And it was just like that, and it was it was just this like, well, of course you do. Sort of like, I realized in that moment, I just traveled so far, right? I traveled so far from 2 days before feeling like avoid the studio, the part of my life that I'm really failing at. Just don't go there, maybe go out to dinner a few more times to cheer yourself up because like all the things that you just like circling around the problem, but not really addressing it, and it was so easy. I just had to go in there and clean the studio. I just had to go in there and move the paintings around a little bit, and, I hid some of the real dogs, but that's okay. I made the best out of what I had. And in context with the whole through line of what I've been doing, these were fine and they're great. She loved them, So the visit just left me, it just reframed everything and it was really great. But there was something else that happened that I remembered that actually was of probably the greatest value. And it came from the conversation I had with her daughter when I was explaining how this art making thing is, it's such a personal journey. And certain things have happened to me, and that's why the art's this way, and certain things I've noticed in my life, and things I love, and things that have changed, and I add them, I take them away, and it's just this place where discernment happens, and this is what it looks like, and this is what my life feels like when I look at these pictures, and I know from experience of being around people in their early 20s who are navigating careers. My daughter is, and both of them actually. And it's just crazy because we spend a lot of time fitting ourselves into things. I mean, we spend our whole life doing this actually, and I see the job descriptions, the job descriptions that my daughter is going to apply for. Like, Dad, what do you think? Like, look at this maybe is good. And you kind of read it. And, if you know the person who's applying, it's like, yeah, I could sort of, you could kind of, we bend ourselves, and then you have the meeting, in the interview process, and they ask you a bunch of questions, and if hopefully you can give the right answers, and then hopefully it seems still like a job you want, and then you go to the next level, and then you get winnowed down, and you keep, if you're wanting it, you kind of bend yourself a little. Well, yeah, no, I love doing Zoom calls or whatever the things are that they need you to do, and sure, I can do that, and I can do this, and then you get the job. And I've watched this with my kids, like you stay for a year or two and then it's not actually like a good fit so much at all, but you kind of bench yourself in it. And then you go look for more places to be and descriptions of them and different pay or whatever, different bosses, different places, different scenarios, different companies. And then you kind of bend yourself for that. It's never just, oh my God, this is the place for me. You're trying to fit yourself into something, some external thing. And we even do this maybe with our partners, well, she needs me to be, more athletic. And so I'm going to try to appear that way. Certainly in the beginning, like I want to be this for her. I remember, my dad loved it when I talked about certain subjects. And so I would do that a lot, even though it wasn't so interesting because I liked the result. I liked him to give me the time of day, or my mom really liked me to be certain things. And so we learn this at an early age to kind of fit in, or adjust. And then we go to college and we choose subjects and we go through that experience and try to get the grades. And then we come out and we try to get the jobs, and we're moving and we're changing and we're fitting and we're learning all the time. So I think it's fine. But art isn't that at all, right? Like, that's what's so cool about it. Art making isn't, hopefully, or it is not a prerequisite that you are fitting in to an external thing at all. It's what can happen when you utterly stop doing that, when you completely let go and follow what would be the right place for you. And it was just such a cool idea. It was just, God, talk about relaxing. I mean, it's like you've died and gone to heaven in a way. The opportunity that we all have to progress and evolve and find all the things we love doing and to share them and put into our art whatever we want. But we're hopefully not doing it. We're not doing it to fit in. We're not doing it because that's to make a certain kind of art. We want to be doing it because this is what it looks like when that artist has total and utter freedom. And it's a thing. And it took me a long time to actually learn that that's what I was doing, to take the bold steps to do that. And it does take some courage, because there's a lot of programming we all have. There's a lot of crowd pleasing, a lot of caretaking that we're involved in, showing up for people. You know, I work with a lot of artists and know a lot that they just feel incredibly guilty when they make art, because it's just too damn self-indulgent, that there's always chores to be done and they just can't find the time. I mean, this is truly challenging, but I just thought this conversation that I had and kind of it just hit me, because I was trying to make this art career seem like an ordinary choice. And it's just not. It is just the coolest choice, I think. Of course, it comes with, the parents, you're going to starve if you're an artist, and all the limiting beliefs and things you have to work through, of course. But in terms of freedom, in terms of getting to learn how to be yourself, that's what art making is. And you can figure it out that, art making is the practice of a process of becoming yourself. It's not just we make this one thing. It's showing up again and again and again, even when you don't feel so sure about it. And I think partly the reason it's hard to get into the studio when you've taken a break is because there's just so much conformity out there. There's so many ways of being. There's so many distractions. There's not a lot of things in the world that's saying the most important thing you need to do while you're here on this planet is to become yourself, to show the rest of us who you are and what's possible and what your dreams are and what you love and you don't hear that on the mainstream, There's a lot of other noise. But where you do hear it is you hear it in your studio. You hear it when you collect the things in one place, when you can walk into a room and see your efforts and remember that, oh my God, look what I did before I went on this trip. Look at this place. Look at the paint on the floor. Something's happening here, but it's me that's happening. And that is just so important to remember. So I guess this little crisis I had midweek, it was just a super happy ending, and it left me with just a tremendous amount of gratitude. So I hope my little story here was helpful for you if you're possibly stuck on the outside of your art making. Thanks so much for being here. Do me a favor and leave a review of this podcast, or better yet, share it with a friend. Thanks so much. Hey, thanks for listening to the Art2Life show. If you enjoyed the podcast, please help me get the word out by sharing it with your friends on Instagram at Art2Life_world. The recording of this and all episodes, along with a place to leave comments, see additional photos, and discover a whole new approach to making art, can be found by going to Art2Lifepodcast.com. And secondly, if you could leave a rating and review in whatever app you're listening on today, I would super, super appreciate it. It makes a big difference. And last but not least, before you go, if you'd like to be on my artist list, every Sunday morning I send out a video blog all about art making. Go to Art2Lifepodcast.com to sign up. And all these links are in the show notes, of course. Thanks so much for being here, and we'll see you next week.